First item would be adoption of the agenda.
Move second.
Adoption, all those in favor? Motion's carried. No delegations or minutes of meetings. We have departmental reports. First one is the fire department report for receipts.
Move this. Second.
Receipt, all those in favor? Motion's carried. The fire chief is here. If you have any questions regarding his report. Okay, so we'll start here. Councilor Marquardt.
Oh, I have a comment, first of all, and I have to pat you on the back, you and your fire department. You set the standard very, very high, and we thank you for that. But I do have a question. Reading through your material, there was a very, very brief mention of hazardous materials. We hear a lot about that through our solid waste. There's only just those two words, and I wondered exactly what kind of hazardous materials
Well,
are faced with.
I'm not sure what context it was in. I'd have to read it.
Okay, well, I'll
That I wrote a month earlier.
I'll remind you at the end of the meeting.
It
How's
says
that?
hazardous material incidents.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, we responded to many hazardous material incidents. It could be simple as a fuel leaking from a vehicle, chemical spills off a truck.
Oh, okay.
And we are trained in that regard. We have equipment for that.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Thank you. Oh, and I do have to make final mention of the recycling of the water. So,
That's working very well, and as I noted, we're capturing rainwater, so that's working extremely well.
yeah, right.
Should do all right this weekend.
Our 20,000 gallon tank is full, and we've got no place to put any other rainwater at this point.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll just go around the table here. Councilor McKinnon, then Price.
Yes, it's a question for the chief. Councilor Arnett and I were just having coffee, and Councilor Arnett, we had a question in regards to a rewards was posted and offered by the fire department for fire in the woods there.
Right.
Please jump in, Councilor Arnett, if you want. But the reward was put up by the fire department, and we may be naive in thinking so. We wondered if that's standard practice, or is the reward put up by the town?
No, the Firefighters Association has put up reward on several occasions, every few years for significant type events like this. For example, many years ago, there was a playground burnt down, and we put up a reward for that, and we had their suspects very quickly. A few other small events like that we've done. In this particular example, we've got no response from it. We had a series of fires in that small forest area, which was quite concerning to us. So we put a reward out, and we had no response. So, but that is money that is raised by the firefighters.
We wanted to commend the department for taking the initiative, because sometimes a quick response is what you need.
Yeah, I think it works better when the school system's in, because in the past practice, we would go up to the high schools and hand out flyers and put them on the bulletin boards and make announcements, and then the population of the school learns very quickly that they can get $500, and they'll probably throw their friend under the bus for that. In this case, school was out during the month of August when this was happening, and so again, we had very no response. So, unfortunately.
Councilor Price.
Yes, and thank you. Very full report. With regards to the Northeast Woods, have we had problems this year?
This year has been extremely good in the Northeast Woods. Very little issues in there that we were aware of. So again, those trends change from time to time. Different forests this year.
Do you think it's that we've done something there differently, or
I
have
don't know if we've done anything other than we try to keep educating the youth to how to behave with their fires or tackle fires, and I think that's helping somewhat.
Yeah, and the water recycling project was mentioned in the Times Colonist too.
I did see that in a meat book sort of thing, or banks and that column, so that was quite nice. Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Councilor Swift.
Thank you. And I'd like to also just compliment you on all the hard work and all the initiatives that you're bringing forward. And you mentioned in here the new recruit training program, Response Ready program, and I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Response Ready is a program which is what I call the meat and potatoes of the training. So what we've done is kind of take the meat and potatoes of all the different subjects, and there's about 20 different subjects we need to train firefighters in, and get them through that really quickly so we can get them on the fire trucks quicker. So they don't know a lot of the detail. And I guess to give you an example of putting a breathing apparatus on, we teach them how to use that safely and properly, change the
briefly chatted on Saturday at the Anna barbecue about your new fire engines, so maybe you can just give us, I know we're going to be talking budget in the next few months, but, and I know that's in the budget discussion, but maybe just give us a bit of information, but maybe a
A
little more.
quick overview on that then is, in our long-term planning, we budget for fire engines about every 6 or 7 years. We had a fire engine in our budget for delivery of this year, but we moved it ahead a year to 2017, hoping the American dollar would change because a significant portion of the truck is based on US dollars. That hasn't changed very much, so we've gone ahead and done an RFP for a fire truck. We received 13 proposals and are now working with a company in Winnipeg to build us a fire truck, which will be delivered in about a year from now. So I was recently in Winnipeg to visit with the factory, go through what we call reconstruction meetings. So it's a pretty big deal for the fire department. You know, we get a fire truck about every 6 or 7 years. So that's where we're at now. We're on budget with it, so everything's looking good. We should get a truck that's going to be very capable for us and meet our needs for the next 20 years.
Right. Thank you for your report. Any further? Seeing none, we'll move on to the rec director's report.
Second.
Received then, all those in favor? Motion is carried.
She's not here, she's on vacation.
So any questions for CAO in that regard?
I'm just curious, how long do we stay open on Sunday? Are we seeing a good attendance?
We're open until 4:30,
Okay,
and yes, the numbers are quite positive so far.
great. And that the fitness studio is increasing when you think it was plateaued out long ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the numbers are fantastic.
Need to expand.
One of the questions I got the other day while I was there at the fitness studio was somebody said, "Oh, I'm very impressed with this facility and must be making lots of money from this." And I said, "Well, most rec centers operate at a 50% recovery rate, but I understand it's better than that. Do we have any idea at this point where we're at? Or are we going to have staff at the center?"
I'm not sure if Don, if you have that offhand, or whether you could report on what the recovery is.
I don't have it in my head, but I'm happy to send out an email to all of you that will refresh that information. There is a letter we wrote recently to an unhappy customer who was unhappy that we increased recreation fees. And I think that has a complete answer. So I think what I'll do is, it was in the reading file a week or so ago, but I'll make a copy of that and send that out to all of you.
Thanks. That was a Courtney resident, I understand.
It was a Courtney resident.
That's all right. We let them know. All right. Any further on the rec report? Seeing none, we'll move on to the planning building departmental report.
Move receipt.
Seeing none, all those in favor? Is there any questions for the planning department? Other than the usual ones about the Northeast Comox Stormwater Management Plan. CAO? That question always comes up when we get this report, so.
It grinds along at a snail's pace. We're actually relatively close to being complete of the Phase 3 document, but the proponents are now looking at taking a step back because a certain portion of the property there is a current ability to develop, but there is a lower elevation piece that may not be with the current design. So they're taking a step back to see what design changes could be made so that all or a majority of the properties could be developed. We're still waiting for confirmation from that. And once we have that, we'll provide a report to council as to what the anticipated time frame is for that to come forward.
Okay. Anything further on the planning building reports? Wow.
One thing I just want to bring your attention to on page 21, the building permit summary year-to-date, and comparing it against 2014 and 2015. So even though the numbers are quite in line in terms of total value, both 2014 and 2015 had significant multifamily construction. Multifamily construction tends to be some years you have it, some years you don't. So what the short answer of this is, we are in an upswing, and we have relatively few single-family lots. That's where the bulk of development is. And that we foresee probably in 20. There would be also a big change in our next 2016 because the world addition. So I would expect to see our year-end values significantly increase.
Can you tell me why we have 5,149 plumbing permits this year? And there was 28 the year before? Or is that a misprint? Or am I not reading that correctly? Very, very bottom. Yeah.
Right bottom.
Yeah.
Plumbing
And
permits.
5,149.
Now, that'd be one heck of a typo.
Yeah.
Because considering right above the plumbing permits, oh no, that was for the month. Yeah, and there's no way we have that many.
Okay. I didn't think so. We have
I can see
28
that.
the year before. Not sure what people are doing with their bathrooms, but. All right.
Okay, so you can fix that.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor McKinnon.
Yes, I don't know if this is a question that the planning would be able to answer, maybe more CAO, just sort of long-range plans, but at the UBCM, it was very clear from a number of communities, not just large communities, but smaller communities, about the lack of affordable housing. And just through planning and through any development that's coming, it came up at coffee with councillors. One of the citizens came up and the question was about affordable housing. Can we do anything? Are there initiatives that are moving forward on this at all?
Yeah, our planner can speak to our affordable housing policy, which we have had in place for a number of years, but that covers a broad range of scenarios. But
So we are in relatively good stead because even though the province had over the last 3 or 4 years backed away from the nonprofit, essentially what we have been doing was building up our revenue to be able to tie into the nonprofit program in terms of the supply of land. So that has been accumulating, and now the program looks like it's going to be back in place. We actually have the ability to participate. So that, and that's quite common with the provincial housing programs. The tap gets turned on and off very quickly, and you have to have funds in advance to be able to take opportunity room. And we are advising councillors of, developers of council's changes to the development cost charge bylaw, not only for downtown, but also in terms of the allowance for no town DCCs on units of 45 square meters or less. So that increased from 29 square meters. And we have had some interest in that.
and just generally speaking on the affordable housing policy, when you deal with developers, perhaps just a quick overview of what kind of things you ask developers for, the levies that you do on different developments and so on.
So any rezoning that's increasing the unit yield by 4 or more units is asked to consider a amenity contribution as part of the rezoning. So that's what's secured through the phased development agreements, and that's equal to land value equal to 10% of the units. So if somebody was doing a 100-unit apartment, looks like that is very good. The land area necessary to support or allow the development of 10 units, that is what will be targeted, and that market value of that land prior to rezoning, that's what the cash contribution would be equivalent to.
It's also worth pointing out on the building inspection side of it that in the May to August period, there were 5 secondary suite permits and 1 coach house. As you know, we approved the coach house, so that's all part of the arsenal of affordable housing measures that we've taken. So no doubt we'll hear more as we go forward.
Secondary suites for sure.
All right, anything further on that? Seeing none, we can move on to the Parks Superintendent report.
Move receipt.
Receive then, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Any questions for our Parks Director?
Well, one more comment too. I'd just like to say that I've already had a call on the Baybrook Park platform and saying how much they appreciated the work and how lovely it was looking. And and very impressed too with the wetland creation. So that must be almost complete now, is that?
It is, except for the planting, and the planting will take place with our volunteer group in late October. Yeah, we're hoping to include the student body from the Glardy Academy to partake as they have in the past as well, seeing as they are our immediate neighbors and they're our future stewards. So anything we can do to cultivate a new group is always a good thing.
I noticed those new basketball hoops are low enough for Councillor McKinnon to try to slam it up.
I'm allowed to play basketball. 10 years.
They're not allowed to do anything for 10 years.
Yeah.
Kudos to Parks for
Yeah, looks good.
working along with partners and getting that done. That's a real
So-
benefit to the community, and it looks great too.
So the Baybrook viewing platform, you say, is going to be completed substantially by November this year. I noticed there's still fencing around, still some work to be done. Will that fencing be taken down when that happens?
Yes.
Yeah, and then you'll do some sort of unveiling in the spring.
Yes, we have some landscaping to do. Of course, we're coming into not the greatest time of year to do our finish treatment.
Yeah.
But we are looking with a view to unveil it in the early spring.
Right, and that would be done in collaboration with Comox First Nation.
That's correct, yes. They will conduct another blessing ceremony, and that blessing ceremony will be advertised for public participation as well. Yeah, we look forward to that. Okay, anything further? Seeing none?
No,
sorry.
just-
Didn't see
We can't forget the seniors. Everything else on Al's report has been
Yes.
mentioned, but I'd
Go
just
ahead.
like to say the seniors are really smiling. I think that's important.
About the kitchen, yes.
That's about the kitchen.
Awesome.
Thank you, Al.
Where they're just smiling.
More than welcome. She'll be open for business, I think, on Friday.
Pardon me, when?
She'll be open for business on Friday.
Oh, Friday.
I believe so.
Wow.
All right, good stuff. So we'll move on to Public Works. Our engineer is here to answer any questions, but we'll receive the report.
Move receipt.
Second.
Receive that, all those in favor? Motion's carried. So this is the status report of where we're at to the end of August. Councillor Price.
Yes, so the Point Homes protection, that's just about finished now, is it?
Yeah, we had the substantial completion walkthrough last week, and so what's outstanding there is the planting and revegetation. So everything above the high water mark will be happening this month, hopefully not this coming week. It'll wait for the rains, and then everything below the high water mark will plant in February, March of 2017, just so we can get through the first storm events and get everything settled, because they wouldn't probably survive. We don't have enough time to get that growth, so. So the
Yeah,
final completion will be spring.
I went by a few days ago and on a sunny day, and the footpath was really well used. There was even a horse rider, quite dramatic, silhouetted against the sky. But I've never seen so many people out there walking along.
Yeah, we've been hearing lots of good things and compliments on it and stuff, so I think it's, in the end, a successful project.
And it looked like, I was driving by, so not looking too closely, but it looked like the surface was fine for the horses' hooves too, because they can be quite destructive. It looks like it's a well-packed trail.
Yeah, it seems to be holding up pretty good, and I think just with time it'll just compact more. I'm curious to know how it's going to make out in the next couple of days with the heavy rains that we're getting. But we did have heavy rains last week. It seemed to hold up.
Just ahead of the storms.
Yes.
Yes, I haven't been there. We've waited much longer.
Councillor?
Yeah, just two comments. Two somewhat contentious things we had was the Point Homes and the Rob Rose. There's a lot of people upset, but
to the next thing, administration report for receipt.
Move receipt.
Those in favor? Motion is carried. So this covers various things, including bylaw enforcement, business license, other elements of administration. So any questions for Deputy Administrator?
I was just wondering, with regard to the vicious dog, it sounds like there is an increase, and I've actually heard of 1 or 2 people who've bitten in the northeast woods. So how do we deal with it? Do we enforce muzzling?
We do. So Bill works directly with them in outlining that once a dog has bitten either a person or another animal, it is deemed as an aggressive dog, and the provisions of our bylaw require that it be muzzled, that it be on leash, of course, at all times when off the property, and even when it is on property, it must be contained either in the home or a special pen must be built in the yard to contain the dog. Owners do have the option of bringing the dog to a qualified assessor, which can determine whether or not the dog is indeed a vicious dog, or whether it can be, or whether it's not with retraining. And if the homeowners can receive that okay from a qualified trainer, then the designation from the dog is removed, so they no longer need to be muzzled when in public or contained within a pen in the yard.
So, and if somebody didn't muzzle their dog, is it that there's so few that they would be recognised, or if they bit someone again, there would be different consequences?
There would be different consequences, yeah. And there would be ticketing provisions as well. We do have ticketing provisions. So if the dog is caught, and our bylaw enforcement officer is pretty good at just doing, periodic inspections of the areas, looking around the homes, just, or the vicinity of the neighborhood, just to, ensure that they are following the restrictions in the bylaw.
Thank you.
Shelley, is there any particular breed that seems to be under the classification of vicious or not?
That we haven't determined yet. I would like to do a little bit of, research into the types of dogs that we have in our, whether there's been any changes in terms of the licenses, the number of dogs that are licensed by breed, to see if there's an increase of a particular breed, just to try and, it's puzzling, it's a little bit disturbing, upsetting to see this increase. It's not just Comox, it's Courtney, it is the Valley at least.
I see that.
Just to see if we can find out what's going on.
Yeah, that's been a live issue all across Canada this summer, particularly in Montreal. I think they had a pit bull bylaw, which is now gone to the courts, so we'll see what happens.
And several resolutions at the UBCM in regards to dogs and control.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you for that information. Anything else on the administration report? Seeing none, move on to the liquor and grocery stores report. So motion to receive that report. Second. Those in favor? That's great. And it looks like we have a presentation. No free samples?
Friday, but they're $35.
Great.
Did you folks see?
So, presentations on planning report, RZ 15.2, return in relation to amendment of the zoning bylaw for the sale of liquor in grocery stores. The outline for the presentation is to review the present situation and then the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and its implications, some highlights of that proposed amendment.
Marvin, you have an error message on the screen over here.
Cool.
Not working.
That was a good presentation.
One of my shorter ones. Probably more stimulating than those.
Finally, one we understood, anyway.
Present situation. It's really a tale of two sets of regulations. You have the provincial liquor regulations, and then you have municipal zoning. So we can't get into the provincial sphere of regulation of liquor sales, but we can, through the zoning bylaw, stipulate where and to some degree what form it takes. The province has recently made it very clear that the provincial regulations are subject to change without prior local government notification or consultation. And their real answer is, if you were concerned with it, you should have changed your zoning bylaw. So it really means that we do have to, we can't rely, we can coordinate with provincial regulations, but we can't rely 100% on provincial regulations in terms of land use implications. Present situation, so the present situation is whether we have two active liquor stores. We have the one in Comox Mall, we have the one in Anderton, and we also have the old one at the Cold Beer and Wine Store of the Warren, which I haven't checked on, but I'm pretty sure it would still be active because they're looking at redevelopment or some redevelopment on the site. In black is the other parcel where, in this area where a liquor store would be permitted, subject to provincial regulations. The province currently requires a 1 kilometer separation for new private liquor store license, private liquor stores, BC liquor stores, independent wine stores that choose to expand their license to sell beer and spirits, and grocery store within store liquor sales. So as you can see, when we start running the 1 kilometer boundary, this site is currently within the 1 kilometer radius of the liquor store on Anderton.
Margaret, before you move from that, where do establishments that have off sales fall into this picture?
That, I believe, is a separate category, like you mean bar off sales.
Yeah.
And I don't know offhand. I think that if you have a pub license, you have certain rights to sell off sales.
It doesn't apply then.
No, I mean, there's a number of different categories of liquor licenses and regulations or non-regulations thereon. What's interesting is, under the current situation, we do have VQA stores, or Ventures Quality Alliance stores, independent wine stores, and wine on shelves under the grocery store provisions of the province are not subject to the 1 kilometer distance restrictions. So, under the present situations with no change to our zoning bylaw, this could be a VQA store or a VQA store. So there is still allowance for coordination between the two sets of regulations. Proposed zoning bylaw amendment would create a new category called grocery stores that would have an allowance for liquor sales, both in terms of wine on shelves and store within a store, which are the two allowances of provincial regulations. Given the 1 kilometer rule, both the existing sites, John's Independence and Quality Foods, are both within the 1 kilometer rule, so they wouldn't be allowed under that provincial regulation that it now says to have a store within a store. So they would be limited to wine on shelves. So, as I mentioned, the proposed zoning bylaw amendment would create a new permitted use category, grocery store, which would say that it was allowed liquor sales. We would propose to add this to the existing zones that currently permit retail sales, excluding those zones not intended to accommodate a large grocery store. So, for example, our industrial zones do have allowance for retail sales. You have an automotive supply store or something in there. That would not be the zone that was intended to have a grocery store, and so we would not propose to include that in that zone. By doing this in advance of any prospective development proposals, what we feel it would do is it would let grocery stores know what the town was interested in, so we give them some guidance. And also, in terms of sustainability, one of the key things is for neighborhoods to have local grocery stores, and we're really abnormally blessed with two in a relatively close proximity. So we hate to see grocery stores relocate or decide not to invest in the town because there is no allowance and for this kind of new retail venture. In contrast to the provincial allowance, the proposed definition for a grocery store would increase the minimum grocery store to 2,000 square meters as opposed to the provincial requirement of 929. And in the report, it does give an example of what the current quality foods and let's see. The areas here it is. Quality Foods gross floor area, including the mezzanine, is now approximately 2,800 square meters, so you can start to get an idea of the ballpark of the provincial requirement, which would be about a third of the size of the Quality Food store, versus what we're proposing, which is two-thirds. In contrast, John's Independence, approximately 2,800 square meters. Also, the proposal would be to limit the sale of liquor to a maximum of 20% of the gross floor area of the liquor store, or 500 square meters, whichever is less. And so that would provide us some kind of control in terms of on the orientation of the grocery store. The province really focuses on, in their regulations, on the percentage of revenue obtained from food items. I believe it's about 50% has to be from food items. So this would restrict it a little bit more in terms of keeping it as a grocery store, primarily a grocery store, while still allowing for some pretty generous liquor sales. And with that, if you have any question? Oh, sorry. And for contrast, just to get the BC liquor store in the Comox Mall is 530 square meters. So that gives you some kind of ballpark.
Councilor Kingrad.
So I'm just wondering, I've never been in this store, but is it a beer and wine store at the Leeward? Because that's the one that's in the middle circle there.
I believe it also sells hard liquor.
Yeah, it does.
Does it sell hard liquor? Okay, all right. I wasn't aware of that.
Somebody told me that.
Yeah. I didn't know. But so my question though is with that, and I guess it's not really our jurisdiction, but with that 1 kilometer range, nobody, I mean, it's going to be almost impossible to find somewhere that isn't within a kilometer of. So when would anyone ever be able to sell liquor? Like hard liquor in a grocery store?
No, it wouldn't be. It would just be the wine on the shelves.
Well, that's what I mean. Well, no, but I mean, if you're going to sell it, why wouldn't you just? I don't follow where that 1 kilometer.
Oh, from the province?
Yeah, what that has to do with anything, because it really stifles the ability to get into that next phase of.
All I can think of in terms of, I mean, historically the province has looked at it from a social perspective in terms of sort of being overserved or over-availability. And I would assume they're also trying to make sure that these stores with the hard liquor don't congregate in certain areas or subsets of the community.
Yeah, just so that seems kind of onerous to me, because, I mean, to me, I understand, like, I wouldn't think that we would want these in little, like, gas station stores and 7-Elevens and stuff. I get that. Whereas a grocery store would possibly have a lot to lose if they were to mess around and sell to kids or whatever. There'd be a significant financial loss to them if they lost their license. But it sure would be convenient if you were going to buy your groceries and you could just pick up your other stuff at the same time. I just find we're so overregulated in this area.
Yeah, I agree.
I think,
I mean, I don't even.
depending on how, I mean, the recent set was some pretty substantial changes, and I believe that you probably, if they're successful, you probably see further tinkering. I mean, they've already, all of a sudden, BQA stores were excluded from the 1 kilometer rule, so you're starting to see some alterations of that, right?
when this issue came up at Courtney Council not that long ago, Jeff Lucas from Cascadia was there and
Yeah.
expressed concern about any changes at all because, of course, there are vesting interests.
Right.
And I think what we're looking at here is the province tried to balance that out by allowing grocery stores of a certain size within certain areas to put BC product on the shelves. So BC wines has to be 100% BC wines. So that was somewhat of the justification. Beyond that, I think you'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Councillor Arnott?
No, that can.
I did want to follow that up by, if the province were tomorrow to reduce that or to take that out, then we're not proposing anything, proposed bylaw change we can allow.
Right.
If the 1 kilometer rule were to be removed for the store within the store, the proposed bylaw, unless corrected otherwise, would be worded such that that was an automatic.
Councillor Swift?
I'm just curious about number 4 there, the minimum grocery store size. Why 2,000 square meters? It's over twice what the province is asking.
And that's just in terms of the context of what we felt was what somebody typically would think of as a grocery store. And it was pretty easy to be able to pull the existing numbers to give you something so you can compare it, and then evaluate if you agree or you'd like to have some kind of an alteration on it.
Councillor Price?
Yeah, just for clarification, and I may have missed this, but the wine on the shelf, it means that it's just open, you go in and buy it next to the cereal and it goes through the same checkout rather than, I know the liquor in a separate store, they'll have a separate till and it's closed off. There's the idea that you could just shop and
I
put it in
believe
your-
so, but they have a number of, yes, okay. They have also a number of regulations then in terms of like operator regulations, in terms of education.
Oh, checking ID, things like that.
I mean, Britain has done it for years, wine and beer on the supermarket shelves. But they drink a lot, so maybe that's not a good example.
They talk funny too.
CAO?
Marvin, did you factor in Shoppers Drug Mart into your category?
They would not qualify. They would not qualify.
By size or by?
By what goods they sell.
We sell a fair amount of groceries.
Not sufficiently enough to meet
No?
provincial
Okay.
regulations, and we would be mimicking on to the degree possible the provincial regulation on that to try to keep it as tight as. Again, they have different powers, so I mean, I've never heard of a municipality getting into regulating use by percentage of sales, and I think that would be quite difficult for us to enforce, probably easier for the province. So we would seek zoning equivalency, but yes, Shoppers Drug Mart currently does not meet the category.
Anything else on that side? So, staff have made some recommendations which you can move or move and amend or not move at all. There's the option of doing nothing at this point. We don't have any particular applications. I guess this is what we would call a proactive step to control the issue and provide some certainty.
I would move the recommendation.
Second.
So that's staff be directed to draft a zoning bylaw amendment for consideration. Of course, that'll come back to our council meeting. Seconded. Any further discussion? I just wanted to reflect back a number of years ago when there was an effort to open a liquor store at the Port Augusta, and that was open for a short time and then it closed. And at that point in time, we passed a bylaw, a zoning bylaw, to limit the number of liquor store locations by site-specific zoning. And because that one was open for a while, it was grandfathered, but since it's been closed for some time, it's no longer in existence. And there was a lot of concern at that time about having that in there. And so that was a specific issue to a liquor store. And as you know, the current liquor store, the government one, was moved from one site to another, so that possibly could happen again. All right, any further? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you, client and staff, for that report. So now we're at the Director of Finance, and his presentation on water rate increases proposed for 2017. So we'll receive the report and then let him proceed.
Move receipt.
Second. All in favor of the report? Receipt. All carried. So, thank you, Director of Finance, for your report, and you have the floor.
So, the memo that is in the agenda is not my typical one-page, one issue, one recommendation memo. So because of that, I'm happy to provide an explanation of the elements that are included in this year's proposed water rates. I'd appreciate feedback, especially if there's anything there that council is uncomfortable with. The process will be that we will bring forward, we don't really have time because we're missing the next cow to bring the draft bylaw back to another cow, but probably the first council meeting in November we'll bring the bylaw to, and then make sure the bylaw is adopted before year end so that it's applicable January 1st. There is a typographical error in the memo in front of you. Recommendation number 5 should read $351 instead of $348. We had two versions of this and initially started with a slightly lower rate because the regional district was talking something under 71 cents. But now that the bulk rate looks like is headed towards 71 cents, we changed some of the numbers, and I missed that one. So, fundamentally, why am I here tonight? The first reason is that, as noted, we're looking at increased regional water rates, and Comox buys its water from the regional district. And of course, we all know that they're beginning to plan for a new water treatment and conveyance system, and it's a fairly significant cost. So they're thinking of increasing their water rates next year and in the subsequent years so that we gradually ramp up to the full cost needed. The second reason I'm here is because Councillor McKinnon asked a very good question a year ago when we talked about water rates, because I had been increasing the rate per cubic meter annually, but I hadn't for several years increased the flat rate that most residents pay. And Councillor McKinnon asked the question, well, why would you increase one but not the other? And so that's the second reason for this presentation, is to explain my thinking about why we're doing both this year. So, what do water fees pay for? If we compare our adopted 2016 budget with where I think we'll be in 2017, which I attached to the memo, you'll see that we've increased our fees by $134,000. And the reason for that is almost exclusively bulk water purchases. What we're paying for when we pay a water fee is first and foremost the bulk water that the town buys from the regional district. We buy about 2.3 billion liters of water from the regional district. That's 2.3 million cubic meters. I'm expecting a slight increase next year, but with the increase in the rate, that will drive what we pay higher. We also pay for maintenance and operation of our pipes and systems. There's some administration and engineering overhead. There's a little bit that goes into equipment reserves and other costs. But if you were to take this budget and turn it into a pie chart, the wedge for the bulk water purchases, the water we buy, that wedge would be over 2/3 of the total pie. So 68 cents or so on the dollar is what we pay for bulk water. And it's our number one cost driver, and one way or another, we've got to recover that cost. What are our goals for setting fees? Anytime we're doing something, it's good to talk about why we're doing it. Well, first, we have to pay for all our operating costs. it's pretty obvious. We fund our operating costs through fees. And then after that, best practices suggest some other things that we might try to achieve. We want affordable rates for reasonable amounts of water. So every household should be able to afford to pay for water. Not necessarily get an unlimited amount of water with that fee, but we should have an affordable basic supply of water. Rates should be fair in the sense that you want to avoid, if possible, customers of one type subsidizing customers of another type. You don't want to overcharge one type of customer and subsidize somebody else by undercharging them. And ideally, we want to encourage water conservation and discourage the waste of water. So if I take our customers kind of one group at a time, I'll start with the smallest group, okay? Our metered residential customers. These are residential customers, single-family homes, duplexes, strata developments that have meters and have also decided that they want to pay by the meter, okay? There's only about 400 of them, and over half are residential stratas. And in 2017, with the proposed rates, they'll contribute about $80,000 out of the total $2.3 million that we need in user fees. So fairly small group. What they pay is a $15 minimum a month. That's $180 a year. That includes 14 cubic meters of water. And because we bill every 4 months, if they go over 14 cubic meters times 4 months, then they pay the metered rate after that.
So Don, does anyone not use 14 cubic meters of water? I mean, that doesn't seem like much water to me.
Doesn't seem like much water, but if you turn to the statistics on the final page of my report, now remember that half of these units are stratas, right? So it's a mix of single-family homes, stratas, and duplexes. The final page of my report has statistics for single-family homes. If you look at, for instance, December 2015, the median use for single-family homes was 11 cubic meters. So roughly 1,000 homes in Comox, single-family homes, used 11 cubic meters or less.
Per month?
In the month of December 2015. So in answer to your question, there are a lot of units that at times of the year, for most of the year even, I'll go so far as to say, are using under 14 cubic meters. So when I look at this again, the 14 cubic meters is actually a good fit. If you have a minimum charge of $15 and someone's using 12 cubic meters, their effective rate is $1.25 a cubic meter. So when we're talking about a cost of water in the $1.20-ish range, this class of customer is actually paying their way. If you total up all the water they use and all the fees they pay, they're paying their way. They're paying their fair share.
And is it averaged out? If 1 month you had 11, and next it was 17, and next it was 13, would it be averaged out over the 4 months or over the year?
Over the 4 months.
Okay.
So typically, most of the customers that we see in this class are paying the minimum for the first 4 months of the year. They're paying the minimum for the last 4 months of the year, and in the summer there's a mix. Some let their lawns stay brown and they're still paying the minimum. Others are using more water in the garden or in the yard, and they're paying a few bucks extra. So I'm one of those customers, and in the summertime, instead of paying 60 bucks for that quarter, I think I pay about $80. So I'm over the limit because we've got some raspberry bushes and some flower pots that we water. So, okay. So as I noted, when you look at this class of customer as a whole, they seem to be paying their way. That's for now. as we look forward and as the regional district's rates for bulk water are likely to rise in subsequent years, we may need to go back and look at that $15. And it might become, in a subsequent year, $16 or $17. I'm not looking at radical increases there when I look out 3-4 years at the potential increases. But that will probably go up a little bit 2018, 2019. Okay? Institutional commercial metered. We have less than 100 customers in total. They use substantial amounts of water, and they pay 14% of all of our fees. And the largest examples I can think of are the hospital and some of the schools. Okay? One of the unusual things about our current rate bylaw, and it's just because that was the way it was when I got here, is that they have no monthly minimum. We have a handful of these customers who do use very little water. And by that I mean maybe 1 cubic meter a month or 2 cubic meters a month. And in those cases, if they use 1 cubic meter, we go out, we read their meter, we compute the bill, we put it in an envelope, we mail it out, and we charge them $1 for it. And then we charge them on the order of about $30 that month for sewer. Because in sewer there's a minimum. And when we established residential meter rates 5 years ago, council said, well, we discussed the pros and cons, and we agreed that there should be a minimum for metered residential. At the time, I didn't really address this, because there's only really a handful of customers, but at this point in time, I'm recommending that we introduce a minimum. And for those customers, it could cost them as much as $180 a year. Okay? Per commercial unit. Flat rate customers. This is the vast majority of our customers. There's about 5,600 units. A unit could be, a duplex would be 2 residential units. A single family home with a suite is treated as 2. A house with a carriage house, that's 2 units. So this is actually more than the number of residences we have per se. As well, you could have a commercial unit that might have multiple stores within a building. So for instance, the Comox Mall is not metered. And so we bill them times the number of storefronts inside. This class of customer basically pays for most of our costs. So whatever costs aren't covered by those other 2 classes, these guys pay the rest. We've been charging $327 a year since 2013, despite increases in our costs, and also despite the 2-cent increase we had this year in the bulk water rate. We didn't bump them because our water consumption actually went down in 2015 a little bit, so we had a bit of a surplus in the water system, and this class of customers, because they pay what's left over, they benefited from that. What we're proposing is $24 more for 2017, and that will raise enough money that it'll pay for the bulk water increase that we get from the regional district. To put things into perspective, what does water cost per cubic meter? So in that first slide I showed you, I said our total budget for water in 2016 was $2.235 million, and we're buying about 2.3 million cubic meters. So the water we buy is 96 cents per unit per cubic meter. The problem is that we can't bill, even if everyone was metered, we wouldn't necessarily be able to bill for that much water. The reason is there are leaks in our system. there are leaks on the customer side. There are uses that are unmetered. If a house is burning down, the fire department responds, and we don't say, wait, we can't fight the fire yet. We have to install a meter first. No. First thing is to put out the fire. And although in our training facility we're now recycling water, if we have fire responses, it does use water. We get estimates of water use from Gord, and we bill the fire department based on the estimates, but there's still an unresolved, unmetered use there. And similarly, when we service the hydrants annually and flush out the water lines, we lose some water there. In January 2016, so back at the start of this year, the regional district conducted a test, and they actually shut our water system off they cut us off from the regional water system, except for 2 meters, and they read those meters for an hour, and the indication was that we were using 77 cubic meters per hour. So this is the middle of the night, in the middle of the week. So a few people would have been out flushing, going to the bathroom. But apart from that, most of Comox is sleeping. So if we kind of assume that most of that 77 cubic meters is from kind of cumulative leaks, that's 60 cubic meters per hour times 24 hours a day times 365 days a year. That's over 500,000 cubic meters of water. That's what? 525 million liters of water? That amounts to about 23% of the total bulk water purchases we have in a given year. So it's substantial. So if we kind of discount for the water that's being lost one way or another, it would be difficult to bill. Our real cost per water is somewhere in the $20s. So why did I go through all this? Well,
Sorry, Don, just before you do, would the hospital use much water at that time of night? I don't, they're metered, aren't they?
they're metered.
So would that have been factored in?
Well, at that hour of the night, their operations are fairly minimal. I mean, they, like homes, people will be getting up and flushing. But for instance, their laundry isn't done here, it's done elsewhere. And I don't think their cleaning crews are working at that hour of the night. So, okay, why I described what water costs us is that part of our water rate is a rate per cubic meter. And this is applicable to both the commercial institutional customers as well as the metered residential. Now, we've been gradually trying to get that rate up by bumping it 3 to 5 cents a year to try and reach that full cost. In 2015, we were at 99 cents. We bumped it 5 cents this year, and that brought us up to $1.04. 2 cents of that was for this year's bulk rate increase. 3 cents was for catch-up. And generally, the 3 to 5 cents catch-up has been consistent for the last several years. When we actually started this process of trying to get our rate per cubic meter up, we began the process in 2003, and at that point in time, we were actually charging less to our commercial customers than we were being billed by the regional district. So we were losing money with every cubic meter we sold. We're getting close to full cost recovery. For next year, I'm proposing an 8-cent increase. So a 5 cent pass-through of the bulk water increase, plus 3 more cents for catch-up. So $1.12, and that will continue in subsequent years. Sooner or later, we'll be caught up to what we consider full cost for water.
So Don, if the full cost for water is $1.23, and we're about to embark on a water treatment plant for $100 million plus, that rate presumably is going to go up. So are we ever going to catch up, or are we going to lag behind?
We'll catch up.
Depending on how much grant money, or if any grant money.
I think within 3 or 4 years, the regional district rate won't keep increasing forever. Once they've incurred all their capital costs, incurred their debt, subtracted off the grants that they're going to get, then the rates will be stable for a few years.
And that's an unknown amount until we find out.
That's an unknown amount. There's too many variables at this point in time. But we know for 2017 that the regional district is starting to budget based on 71 cents.
And so, but the cost increase could be significant at that, when that plant starts.
2018, 19, 20, yeah. Yep, absolutely. But we'll cross that bridge, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay, so the final kind of structural change I'm proposing is that we currently bill flat rate residences that use over 600 cubic meters of water per year. We bill them extra. And traditionally in the last several years we've been billing them at a rate that's 150% of that bulk water rate. So this year with our bulk water rate at $1.04, if someone goes over 600, I think it's $1.56 or thereabouts that we bill them. This actually began when there weren't many houses metered, because we had a house that had a significant leak and wouldn't repair it. And so we initially started it as a tool to address users who wouldn't maintain their water system. As we metered, we found there were some homes that just use a lot of water. The owners choose to use a lot of water, and we've run into continuing leaks. If you've looked at the council reading file every month, you've seen that every month after we get our water readings in, we send out letters warning people that their use has spiked upward and they're on track for crossing the 600 meter threshold. Please check your system, please repair your leak. If it's a major amount of use, we'll send out Public Works and download an hourly log of water use and provide that to the owner, and that'll show us for sure whether or not there's leaks. Does their use drop to zero in the night or not? We go to pretty substantial efforts to try and address those water consumption issues, but it's very much like playing whack-a-mole, because 2 or 3 bad leaks will pop up every month, and we'll deal with those householders, get that resolved, and then 2 or 3 more will pop up the next month. And so between myself and the Public Works staff, it's kind of a continual fight. In 2015, when the drought was on, it was actually, and we were at stage 3, it was actually very useful, because there were places where there was green grass, not so much because people were cheating and watering when they shouldn't, but because there were leaks in the neighborhood. And so Public Works in 2015 installed a lot of water meters to try and find some of those leaks, and they found some substantial ones. So,
And sorry, just one of those letters I saw today was, obviously I won't mention the name or address, but you know, the significance of an ongoing leak can really add up. I mean, that house was, I think, 190 liters an hour. And we did the math in the letter and explained that this could add up to like 1 million liters in over a period of time. I'm thinking, you know, we just gave credit to the fire department for saving 1 million liters, and yet on the other side, there's somebody perhaps who's not attending to their system that could easily waste that. So it's a good fight to fight, I think.
One of the letters that went out this month, I think, had 1,100 some cubic meters that they used from the 1st of January through till the end of September. And that won't be our highest use for the year. So, we've got one customer, again, we won't name them, but who has been kind of top the heap for multiple years. When we first installed a meter, they were using over 2,000 cubic meters a year. But they're down in the 1,600 range now.
How do they use that much water? Like a fountain? That
I could describe it, but then I'd be telling you who it is, because you'd recognize the house. So,
but it's just normal consumption?
Inside, it's outside, it's water features, it's appliances, it's irrigation, it's a large lot, it's extensive landscaping, it's everything all at once. But off-season, like away from the summer, they're down in the 14 cubic meters a month range, just like everybody else.
It's mostly outdoors.
One of the things, if you go to that stats page, that in the last page of my report, the last line of the stat each year, at the bottom line of each of those tables, 2015, 14, 13, 12, it says the highest 10% used. And in each month, that tells you what, like in December of 2015, there were 2,036 homes that used water. Keep going down.
Oh, this down to,
Yeah.
okay,
There.
oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, there. In December 2015, there were 2,036 homes that used that had meter that used water. So if I take the 204 that used the most, they used 24% of the water of those 2,000 homes. And consistently, the top 10% users actually use 25% or more of our water. So, to try and incentivize, or that's not a real word, to try and encourage water conservation, much better way to put it, I'm proposing to reduce the threshold to 600 cubic meters. Now, if we do that, there are people that are going to feel the pain sooner. They're going to pay on an extra 100 cubic meters of water use times whatever rate. And so we don't end up with too much revenue. I'm actually proposing to reduce the rate we charge per cubic meter over 500 to 130% of the rate. That's still $1.46 per thousand, or per cubic meter rather, times 100 cubic meters, it's 146 bucks. So if somebody uses 600 cubic meters, they'll get a $146 bill that they wouldn't have got this year, right? Because this year, if they use 600 cubic meters, they're not going to get a bill. But next year, if this rate proposed goes ahead, they will. And so it strongly discourages water waste. That being said, there are some things that you need to consider very carefully. The first is that if you look at the average use in a year, average single-family home use in 2015 was 254 cubic meters. Now, we were at stage 3. In 2014, it was 291. So typically, we often see average single-family home use over 250. So 600 is more than twice average use. 500 is not over twice average use. It's more than twice median use. Median means half of our customers use around 215 cubic meters a year, right? So there's more people that are going to cross the threshold. We only have half of our customers who are metered, and many of them did not ask for a meter. Their homes were meter ready, or we've worked on their water service, or we've upgraded all the services on the road, whatever. They've ended up with a meter, and some of them strenuously object because they weren't given a choice about getting a water meter, and they don't believe in water conservation. They don't believe the letter when they get it from us because we must be wrong. They couldn't possibly be using that much water. And so we see customers that take no action and then go over the threshold and then get a bill and then are extraordinarily unhappy. We try to provide people with warnings first, but many leaks use more than 300 cubic meters a month. And when I look back to 2015, if you look to September 2015, you'll see that the highest use that month was 625 cubic meters. that was a house that, on Linden, that had been given a meter because we suspected there might be a leak because the area was very green, and that was one house in 1 month. So this is not going to be universally loved.
Go ahead, Councillor Arnott, then Swift.
So when the water meters were being implemented a number of years ago, and then if people took them on, they were stuck with a metered rate, and then from what I recall, I think I was in the penalty box this time, so council, they went back and said, okay, if you had a meter, we would allow you to go with the unmetered rate?
You could opt out.
You could opt out, yeah.
Right,
And so-
right from the beginning, when council approved the metering program, council said we did not want to make it mandatory universal metering, right? So what we were going to do was we were going to install meters on all homes that were meter ready, and we were going to, and for anyone who asked for a meter, and then once they had the data, once they saw how much water they were using, they could decide whether they wanted to pay by the meter or pay the flat rate. Now initially it was a one-way switch. Once you switched over, that was it. You had to stay. But 2 years later, they said, council said, no, that's particularly harsh. We want to encourage people to join the program, and that just seems too restrictive. So people annually can make a decision. You can decide that this year I want to be on, next year didn't work out so well, this year I'll ask to go off. We put in about 100 or 150 meters a year, depending on operational issues. We're going over our budget in water meters. And I have to be honest that we still have people from a year or two ago that have asked for meters that we haven't got to yet.
So I guess my question is, how do we go about billing them this extra amount when they have indicated that they didn't want to be billed a meter rate? So, but we're billing them anyway. How do we discuss that with them?
Well, we try to warn them in advance.
But they're saying I shouldn't be metered.
It's part of our bylaw that says that if you have a meter and that you do use more than 600 cubic meters, then you will pay essentially a penalty.
Okay.
But they could still be paying the flat rate, right? And then if they do have a meter, for whatever reason, there's a meter ready or it was put in there by the town for other reasons, then that's how we measure. Obviously, the other half of the town, we can't measure because we don't have a meter.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That answers.
Councillor Swift, I think you had a question?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I didn't realize if you have a flat rate, you could also be charged that extra fee if you have a meter. Okay, getting back to that, some receiving bills objecting because they're paying the meter rate, but are they then made aware, or are they aware that they could be doing the flat rate instead?
Well, they are on the flat rate.
Oh, no, they are on the
They
flat
are on the flat rate. They're paying at present time $327.
Okay,
And then if they have relatively high use, if it looks like they're going to cross the 600 cubic meter threshold, then they'll get, if we can, at least 2 warnings. And if it's been a couple years since they've received a letter, I might give them a warning again this year. And those go out monthly. And they're in council's correspondence reading file. So if you read the reading file, you'll see that there's a wad every month.
I didn't realize they were paying the flat rate. So that's a good piece of information to know.
So I think another way of saying it, Dawn, is that flat rate customers pay $327 a year for up to 600 cubic meters of water.
Absolutely.
And anything over that,
Right.
we can charge you more if you have a meter.
And since water is costing us over $1.20, that's over $700 worth of value. So you pay $327, you get, something like $750. But At that point, once you hit 600 cubic meters or 500 under my proposal, then you got to start paying more. We do have a discount that we give if there's a leak that's underground that people have repaired. So if there's a leak you can't see, okay, and you fix it, in that period we would discount. And we charge a lower rate, and it's not $1.50, it's the bulk rate. So you still have to pay the bulk rate, but it only kicks in at 600 cubic meters, or, as I say, that's lower than 500. That's correct.
I still have, can I just keep going? The commercial, metered commercial people, are they able to pay the flat rate or no?
No.
So
No,
they
that's
don't
been,
have
that's been a feature of our bylaw since the 80s. If you've got a commercial business and you've got a meter, you pay by the meter, and that's been once upon a time, that was the one class of customer that had meters. Nobody else did.
And lastly, given that the flat rate users are paying 84 to 85% of the cost, as more people switch on to meters, well, actually, I have two questions. Aren't our costs going to go way up for the metered water?
Yeah. Yes, yeah, because what's going on now is essentially there is subsidization going on, right? There's roughly 1,000 customers. No, I'm exaggerating because we've already got 400 switched over. There's 800 customers, single-family homes, strata units, duplexes, that could save money by switching over from the flat rate, which is this year is $3.27, to the meter rate, and that's potentially as low as $180. So you could save $147 a household by switching over. In the fall of last year, so like October, November of 2015, I sent out over 500 letters to stratas and the unit holders in the stratas, saying to them, your strata is using very little water, we've got meters, you could switch and save. And as a result of that, we've got about 130 or 140 units in, I think, 5 different stratas switched over. And as people switch to the lower cost option, then there's more of the burden that's left on the flat rate customers. Way to look at this is if you have some customers that are using very little and some customers that are using a great deal, that 327 is the average of the two. And so if you lost the low rate customers, right, if all the people who could save $100 peeled out, the cost would have to rise to match.
I guess, and just lastly, is there anything else we can do to encourage people to pay the metered rate? I guess it would be their advantage.
Well, there's going to be, as we go forward in this, and as Councillor Grant has pointed out, the costs of the regional system will be factored into it. You will see a constant re-looking, revising, whatever, adjusting the rates. So, as the flat rate goes a bit higher, you'll have to also adjust 2018 onwards the minimums for metered rates. You will see opportunities for people to save money. People will have to make their own decisions based on their consumption, their uses, but from some figures that I saw for the $100 million plus project, if we don't get any grants, water rates could double, right? And so we'll have to balance that out in the system, and I'm sure we'll be hearing from the Director of Finance, Director of Finances as we go forward over the years as to what the rates are, and other communities have gone through that process, particularly when they're 100% metered.
This year, if these proposed rates go ahead, the incentive to switch from flat rate to metered goes up because we're increasing the flat rate by $24.
Right.
but we're not increasing that $15 a month, $180 a year minimum on the metered rate. So if you are a low-use customer, in 2015 you could save up to $147. Now that's going to go up to by $24. So you're going to be at what, $171 you can save starting in 2017. And in subsequent years, if it's something similar, where the flat rate goes up by maybe 24 or 30 or 36 bucks, and the metered minimum only goes up by 12, which would be proportionate to the water they're using, then that gap, that annual discrepancy between the flat rate and the metered rate will continue to stretch slowly, and there'll be more and more incentive for people to switch over. It's really amazing how much resistance we get from people. I had a strata owner basically say to me, "This doesn't make sense. It's too good to be true. I can just save $147. This doesn't make sense."
Yeah.
Councillor Grant.
I think I recall when Cumberland did their water system too, and they got some grant money, one of the conditions of the grant was that they had to go to universal metering in order to get the grant money. So it wouldn't surprise me if that is what came down the pipe on this one too. But my question here was, of those customers that are using over 600 cubic meters of water, just a rough idea, how many of them don't fix the problem after a warning, and then how many of them, after they get a couple of bills, still don't fix the problem? Like, is it a handful or is it a whole pile?
I'd say it's a handful.
Because it's a disincentive, right, to go on a meter, to suddenly, now you know what I'm doing, and all of a sudden I start getting possibly bigger bills, or a bill to fix a leak. I mean, it's a total disincentive to go on the system.
I know it is, but it's vital to us keeping our costs under control, that we can figure out where the leaks are. And we're, honest to goodness, finding 2 to 3 or 4 or 5 new leaks a month. And part of the problem is that we're just at the age where the poly-B services that were installed back in the 80s are just now starting to fail. And now it's not just poly-B. I want to make that clear. I've seen copper fail as well. But in my neighborhood particularly, we've seen some. There are whole neighborhoods where we've seen services fail, almost simultaneously.
You know, what's interesting is, anecdotally anyway, that most people know what they spend every month on their cable, cell phone, heating, lighting, whatever you want to call it, bills. And this is just another, this is an important utility. It's our biggest expense by category for the town, budget. So there is a responsibility, and those that are metered and not paying a meter rate have access to that information, and they do get fair warning. And using more than 600 or 500 in this case is exceptional, and is double the average basically that we're looking at for most consumers. And I think that you have to use a lot of water to reach that, or you have a major leak, in which case, if there is a leak, we want to make sure that that is addressed, because that's literally money going down the drain.
That's why I asked that question. It seems like there's only a handful that don't actually buck up after, especially to get a bill, I would say.
No, we don't see too many repeat warnings. It's just that, like you say, it's the whack-a-mole approach, trying to get all the leaks. Councilor Margaret.
Thank you. Undoubtedly, many people will be encouraged over a period of time to meter their water. Those people, what will be required of them in order to become a meter customer?
So typically, whenever Public Works is working on a water service, they'll upgrade the water service using modern hardware, and a meter will go in, because once they put all the other hardware in, it's meter ready. Then it's up to the customer to figure out whether or not they can save money. And they have to take some initiative there themselves. We include at least one article per year in our newsletters saying, you know, it's now time to switch, or you can save money by switching. If somebody isn't sure how to find the readings on our website, all they got to do is phone Town Hall, 339-2202, and we'll explain to them what their magic MXU number is. That's the serial number that identifies their service and where they can go on our website to find the monthly usage report, and they can see where they stand compared to other properties in Comox. And if they ask the question, could I save money, we'll happily provide them with a little analysis that will show what would happen next year if their water consumption remains the same as this year.
So it's pretty simple.
Yeah, and there's a form we ask them to fill in if they want to switch or if they want to get off again, and that's also on our website. We accept switches basically up until mid-March. We have to cut it off at some point because the bills for the first 4 months go out at the end of April, and then in May we're collecting taxes, so we've got to figure out by April whether you're in the metered program this year or whether you're flat rate, and make sure it's coded properly in our systems.
All right, so as you heard the Director of Finance at the outset of his presentation, he's looking for feedback. He has presented his recommendations both in his report and on this presentation. By the way, thank you for that presentation. Very thorough. And so council, it's up to consideration whether you wish to pass these recommendations or revise versions or make no recommendations. So that's where we're at today. And of course, this would come back to council for consideration of the water rates bylaw in November.
I would move number 2.
Okay.
Second it.
Okay, on recommendation 2 is to maintain the $15 per month minimum and $1.12 per cubic meter over that in the 4-month billing cycle. So seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried.
And then I'll move number 3 and we can discuss that.
Second.
Okay, and that's to set the rate for excess use at $500 and $1.45. So that's moved to second discussion. Go ahead, Councilor McKinnon. Do you have any discussion or no? All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried.
I'll move number 4 as well.
Number 4, okay.
Second.
And that's the minimum for commercial and institutional at $15 per month. Moved and seconded. Okay, so any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried.
And move number 5.
And I'll second it with the 351.
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. All right, good work. So that will come back to council for formal consideration in November.
So it's clear that Councilor McKinnon is not responsible for the flat rate for going up and being increased.
Sorry, did you say no? You can tell which arm you're raising it. One of them's a no, one of them's yes. All right, moving on to the next report. This is the utility collaboration report. Motion to receive the correspondence.
Move receipt.
Second.
On receipt, then, all those in favor? Motion's carried. CAO, you provided a recommendation that we not support that. Perhaps you can give us an explanation as to your recommendation.
I guess the quickest summary would be that we currently work on a pay-to-play model, which is if you benefit from a service and you participate in the service, you contribute financially to it. This suggestion of an ad hoc committee would involve jurisdictions that do not benefit nor contribute financially to it. So my opinion is that it's not something that council should be supporting. The current model of, as I started by saying, pay-to-play works and should be continued.
I would also remind that back some years ago when the planning issue at the regional district was being discussed, that was the argument back to us was you got to pay if you want to be in the planning. And we thought the cost was onerous, so we left. Now it seems they're trying to come around the other side and go at this a little differently, but what I see happening here, and when we were sitting at the table, I brought these arguments up at the regional board, is that they're gonna tell us how they want us to do it, and then we're gonna get the bill. And that doesn't seem right to me. When you look in light of the fact that they don't own any sewer, they don't own any storm drain, and what little water they do own, they already sit on that committee. They're not paying for anything, and yet they want to tell us how to do it. So to me, that doesn't work. Unless they want to come to the table and bring a checkbook and start paying for a third of everything that happens, then I think that this is the way to go.
All right, so any further questions for CAO or recommendations?
Could there be a suggestion of how much they would have to pay to be part of the, to be able to have a voting member? Or is that?
That'd be very difficult to quantify in terms of water, sewer, and solid waste. Well, solid waste, I guess, they participate to some extent, but drainage is a whole unknown. The one thing about storm drainage, I just point out that there is, there has been some work done recently in the Queen's Ditch area regarding that part of Area B in collaboration with the DND. And the town has played a bit of a role in that, and that may require us to consider some collaboration there on that specific drainage area. Of course, it ties in with the Northeast Comox stormwater management plan too. So, I mean, those kind of things we have been collaborating, not necessarily paying into anything yet, but that's a good example of, even without a committee like this, we are working collaboratively. So, an overall committee on this, I'm not sure what it would do other than incur administrative costs.
Well, and I would also, when we talk about our Pritchard Road and the drainage, we're certainly collaborating with the farmers down below in Area B, so you can't tell me they're not informed on what's going on, because they are. So it's not as though they're left completely in the dark here either.
Any other questions?
I just wanted to add, so the conversation around the Queen's Ditch and the happening at staff level.
Correct. Yep. All right, so a recommendation that would be suitable perhaps says that we not support this model. I guess that's what we're looking for. They're looking for constructive input, but I guess we're not supportive of this committee.
So I would
just move the recommendation from the CAO.
Yeah. Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Go ahead.
And I think, we could point out that when there is a need to collaborate, we would get together, and it would actually, this seems like a very cumbersome model. I really don't see how we could actually tackle it. But so I think we could add that, certainly a willingness when in individual circumstances, and do the Queen's Ditch as an example.
Sure, we're going to do that.
We can, we're very happy to work together.
We're already doing that anyways.
Yeah, but it wouldn't hurt to point that out.
Yeah, and then other examples that could come up. Where there's a need, if you try and create something that's, you can't even envisage how you would operate it, I think you're sort of going down a path that's not going to be successful.
The old solution looking for a problem.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moved and seconded then, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Okie dokie, so I think we have another presentation. The hat trick of presentations.
And what's
This is from Jennifer Waite and our town planner on the development application review. So motion to receive a report first. Receive then, all in favor? Motion's carried. We understand Jennifer will lead the presentation. The light's on you, so it's...
General, providing an overview of the report and not the available.
Alrighty, so as Martin said, we're just here to provide an overview of the report that was submitted for your information regarding the development application processing reviews. So here's our presentation outline. So we're going to go a bit over the background and then going into the analysis of the report, why it was done. And then we're going to get into the main points of the report and then follow up with some questions. So the background. So council had set target minimum processing times for development applications. For the OCP rezoning applications, it was around 6 to 8 months. And for the DP and DVP applications, development permit and development variance for permits, it was 3 to 4 months. As well, in June 2014, the procedures bylaw was updated to help streamline the development application process. So, looking at that background, we decided that we would do an analysis of our processing times for those development applications, see if we were meeting the processing times that were set by those targets, and then continue to see if we could examine the impacts of the update to the procedures bylaw that was done in 2014. So we'll start off with the development permit, development variance permit, and development permit exemptions. So we'll start with the DPX. So as you can see in 2011, that's when the development permit exemptions were implemented with the OCP. So these applications are pretty quick and are only a couple days. It essentially is just an application that it involves a written letter, and if they meet the exemptions for that development permit area, they are permitted to proceed. Okay, so and then we also calculated the yearly averages for development variance permits. So as you can see in 2014, we've highlighted that. That was when the procedures bylaw was implemented. Since then, you can see that the slope of the curve has evened out and then proceeded to go down. These dotted lines represent those targets that were set. So this is the 3 to 4 months. So development permits are still yearly averages are still well below those set targets. With the development permits, they are also within or below those set targets. One thing I would like to highlight in terms of the data, in 2013 we did not have a significant amount of development permits or development variance permits, and especially with the DPs, the amount actually increased. So due to that, the averages kind of skewed because of the lack of data points within 2013. So we still, just due to those circumstances, we feel that the procedures bylaw actually did help level out and curb the processing times for development permits. And then here is the official community plan amendments and rezoning applications. Again, the dotted lines represent the target minimums for the processing times. And as you can see in 2014 with the implementation of the procedures bylaw and the update, it has helped curb those OCP procedure time, processing times. So it has taken a nice downward curve from what has been set in the terms of the targets. For the the procedures bylaw, it was intended to help streamline those applications and kind of speed up those processing times. So because of the length of these applications and the requirements, we decided to take more of an in-depth look into the rezoning applications and kind of dissect and see how those averages are spread out in terms of each separate application. So we closely examined those, the application processing times per year. We split them up and we saw the processing times for each separate application. And as a result, we found 2 categories of applications. There were the standard applications, which fell well below the average processing time that we found throughout that year. And then there were the more complex applications, which were above the average processing time. And those applications tended to involve more involvement in terms of back and forth, legalities, and other aspects that increase their processing time. So here is the graph for the 2011 applications. This is a very good example of a great amount of data in terms of seeing how the average pans out. And you can see a lot of the applications within 2011 were well below what the average was. And then where there was a few of those complex applications that I mentioned that were above that linear average processing time. And then this is in 2012. You can see that the trend is also quite similar, with only certain applications being above that average. And then 2013, a little bit more of a spike, but still a few that are under the linear average. 2014, same kind of situation with only a few. And then 2015 as well. And then these are the current ones for 2016. These are the ones that have been completed so far. Obviously, we're looking to see this. There are obviously more than 3 applications that are currently occurring. We will see the completion of the data, obviously, once those other applications are completed. So when we saw the complex applications, we wanted to see what the breakdown was in terms of what the actual processing time was with staff actually processing the application versus times when the application was sent over to legal before adoption, or the applicant was looking for redesign, aspects like that. So we broke, within the report there was about 3 that we broke down to kind of give a good visual about what actual time staff has implemented in terms of these processing steps. So for the Berwick timeline, there was the total processing time was about 12 months. But when we broke it down to see when we actually had the application in our hands and we were processing it ourselves, that it was only about 3 months for that. So a lot of the time was taken up by the legal right before adoption. So all of the application times are from the submission, so the date the submission was received by staff, and then to the adoption. So in that time, obviously there was the applicant redesign, which took about 3 months, and then we received it, and then it continued on, and then there's about 6 months of legal. So after breaking down these more extended, complex processing times, it showed that the total time that the town was actually processing it was essentially matching what the average was for those years. And yeah.
So could I just ask you a question?
Of course.
While we're at it? When an application comes in now, we're only accepting complete applications? Is that correct? So we're not running into this situation where they come and it's not complete and then they don't bring something in for 3 months, and we're not doing that anymore, I understand.
No, we, for a complex application like a rezoning application, the person comes in, and then we give them actually a customized application checklist, the same checklist that we will use to ensure that it's complete. So we're both working on the same sheet.
So when we say now that something started on X day, we know that that's the day that the application started. In the old days, the guy used to come in and say, well, I came in and I've been doing this for 2 years. Well, you never brought the stuff in for 2 and then for a year and a half of that. So we plugged that gap is what I'm getting at. Okay. And how much of delay would you say would be on the developer's side of this? Once they come and the application's complete, I guess it just wraps through, does it?
Yes, I mean, there's a lot of work that occurs initially, so that the applicant is now doing the pre-application consultation. So that's giving them feedback from the community. So they will take that into account before they submit. And staff try to be as upfront as they can in terms of what they foresee being the staff's recommendations or any issues that we have. I would say probably off the top of my head, maybe 50% do some sort of a redesign or some kind of a modification either due to their needs or a requirement from the town. And then the legals, this one was quite extended, and that was because of a mortgage holder being difficult in regards to some charges to be on. Usually the legals will only run us probably 1 to 3, averaging about 6 weeks.
That seemed about like, okay, so good, thank you.
So the main points, I guess we can take away from this information report is that the target minimum processing times are being maintained. and that the more complex applications, when they are broken down, they are still meeting those target timelines. And then the changes that were made to the procedures bylaw in 2014 have had a positive effect overall in the applications in terms of streamlining, and as we discussed, ensuring that the applications are complete and not lengthening those processing times.
One thing about the legal side of it, I've had experience with that in the past. I understand what the town does now for a covenant around phase development agreements or standard utility rights of way and so on and so forth. Is that the town offers developers essentially, here's the standard documents the town has, you get your lawyer to do them, or the town says we'll get the town's lawyer to do them using the standard form and you pay for that. Is that an accurate summary?
What we've done now is the application fees have been increased. Things like rezonings based on the average number of legal documents prepared and our average costs.
Right.
And we essentially create the documents. If they're quite standardized, it's something we're used to doing. Staff will do it wholly. Otherwise, we will get our lawyer at our cost to provide customized clauses and then submit that in a signable form to the applicant, with the applicant's lawyer doing the Form C.
Right. So there's no back and forth really in any great extent on that.
No, it's the time saving in terms of planning staff time, applicant time has been substantial, and it totally cut out a significant amount of finance time, because before we were taking bonds and then tracking the bonds and doing withdrawals and all this other.
And also your review time of documents that were standardized and so on and so forth.
And yes, we've actually been found out what we're doing right now is we're providing the documents to the applicant's lawyer, and we're saying on the undertaking that they be exactly as submitted, or any changes highlighted. And then that, especially when you have a 15-page document, that stops us from having to always recheck the documents to see if there's been a change. And that, again, that's been just huge for us.
What are the developers saying about this? I know there's frustration in other communities. I had a chat with a developer the other day from another community that was having issues, but I know last time we had a really sort of hot market. My phone was ringing just about every day with somebody mad about something. And I'm not getting nearly as, I'm not going to say it's perfect yet, but it's been far less. And usually the issues get resolved very, very quickly. So are the developers happy with this system? Are they liking it better?
Yes. I've received positive comments, and really the whole checklist was coming from the developers. Courtney actually had one of their meetings a number of years ago with the developers, and it was quite surprising because the developers more or less said, would you guys just tell us what you want? And from a planning perspective, that's kind of unique because we're usually dealing with the architects or anything else who really hate checklists and they don't like being told what to do. And this was coming from the development community. Now it's a matter, what's really nice is we're able to provide that to them. They're able to immediately take that to their professionals without losing information. Like what did you say or not say? So yes, it's been very well received. Things like Berwick, the mall, those kind of remote. I mean, the architects are not local. They've gone very smoothly. And then the only debate is on what a guideline says or a requirement itself as opposed to other aspects.
Thank you.
Yes, McKinnon.
Well, this is really good news in my opinion. When this was brought forward in 2014, this was the hope that we would be able to achieve these goals. It still allows for public scrutiny and council scrutiny, of course. So the only thing I have to add is that I hope this is made even more public and that it's heard in our community and in the business community. And our good friends at the press, I'm sure, will take care of that.
Right, although I think it's probably suitable at this point to do a press release on this with a link to the report and also provide a copy of this report to the Developers Association.
Okay, absolutely.
And the BIA, I would assume.
Certainly worth celebrating.
And the Chamber of Commerce, and whoever else wants. Thank you, Jennifer. Awesome presentation.
Yes, very good.
All right, so with that, we've moved receipt of it, and those other things would be just directions to staff for those, for information purposes to those agencies, and we'll press release to publish it in case Spencer didn't quite get all that.
I was away.
We'll say it's just for the record. So last item before we move in camera is the letter, email from the BC 55 Plus Games with the seniors who received various medals, and my suggestion, talking to staff, would be just that we send them all a letter of congratulations, and we have our staff work on that. Do we need a motion for that? Might as well.
Second.
Move second, all those in favor? That's great. All right.
Move in camera.
Yeah, we have to pass a resolution to go in camera under sections of the community charter.
I'll move that.
Second.
All those in favor? We'll adjourn for a few minutes, and motion's carried.